What's happening? Thanks for joining me on this Friday, the best day of the week. As always, I appreciate you. If you're a Celtics fan and you want my reaction to last night's game, you can check out the podcast I did a post-game podcast. It's on the channel here on the YouTube spot and also Spotify and Apple Pods. I needed to vent after watching that game last night, so I did a little bit of venting, broke down the game, talked about what we could expect heading into the future. So again, if you're a Celtics fan, you can go check that out. I recorded that last night. All right, let's get to the Patriots. The rookies are in town. The rookies are on the field right now as we speak. It is rookie minicamp, and Drake May is here. Jalen Polk is here. Everybody is here for the first time as teammates getting together. It's a very exciting time because of this draft class, all the anticipation leading up to the draft, what they did on draft weekend, but the work truly begins now. With that said, let's be honest. There is very little that we are going to learn this weekend. Rookie minicamp, as my friend Greg Bedard would call it, is orientation. If you went to college, you had orientation weekend, right? You roll around, you check out the quad, you check out some of the classrooms and the dorms, you shake hands with people, you might be able to sneak out, hang out a little bit during the weekend. It's orientation. And that's what the Patriots rookie class is going through right now. They're going through their rookie orientation. I thought Dan Orlovsky posted a really cool video yesterday about what quarterbacks have to learn and what the offense has to learn beginning this weekend. He went through some of his playbook going back to 2008 when he was with the Texans and Kyle Shanahan. I thought it was a really, really cool look. You should check it out when you have the time. But that's what it's all about. It's getting acclimated to your teammates. It is starting to learn the offense. And it's really the beginning of your NFL career. But we're not going to learn a lot. It's not like we're going to go out there and whatever is reported, if anything is reported from today or tomorrow, we're not going to learn about Jalen Polk's ability to succeed at the NFL level because of rookie minicamp. But there are some things that we could learn as far as this team and why this part of the process is important. Again, we're not going to learn about these players and how they're going to be able to transition to the league, but we can look at the next few days and we can gather some information. And we can say that there are things that are part of this process over the next 48 to 72 hours that are critical to the operation. Number one, let's start with the offensive line. The offensive line was a huge problem last year. We all know it. I don't have to go through it anymore. We talked about it enough. I want to move on from 2023. It's a bad memory. But the offensive line wasn't good. And we know that there are questions on the offensive line heading into 2024. The transition from the right side to the left side for Chuck Okorafor. The same transition for Caden Wallace. Cole Strange is not going to be out there. So who is going to take over at left guard? Is it going to be Robinson? Is it going to be Leverett? But really, Scott Peters and Robert Kugler, the offensive line coaches that the Patriots decided to hire during the last few months, they start their work. And so as we sit back and we wonder about the rookie offensive lineman, Wallace from right to left, Robinson, how he's going to be able to bring his skill set to the NFL and play on the interior offensive line, if Robinson can beat out City So, or if he can beat out a healthy Cole Strange or Leverett or Mafi. This really is the time where Peters and Kugler begin their work. And I don't know if there's anything more important aside from the development of Drake May and T.C. McCartney, Alex Van Pelt, Ben McAdoo, how they handle that process. I don't know if there's anything more important about this football team to get right during this preseason stage, during this camp stage, during this mini camp stage than the offensive line. Peters and Kugler have a ton of pressure on them. They're not only having to work with Owenu full-time right tackle for the first time in his career, not only working with the rookie class, not only trying to move Okorafor and Wallace from the right to the left, but also trying to figure out left guard, also working with David Andrews, this new scheme. There is more on the center with this scheme when you look at what he might have to figure out while the bullets are flying. It's a new running scheme. So all of this stuff, a lot of it is new. And Peters and Kugler, They start the teaching right now. This is when you start to get your hands dirty. So that part is very important. And Kugler and Peters, even though we're not going to learn a lot about these players and their success or failure at the NFL level over the next couple of days, Peters and Kugler are going to gather some very important information and intel about who they have on this offensive line and whether or not they feel as good about the transitions we've talked about as they did going back a few weeks ago. So this is a very important beginning for Kugler and Peters trying to figure out the big guys up front. Let's talk about Drake May. This is the opportunity for the rookie quarterback to make that initial connection with his teammates. And that's important. You know, Gerard Mayo, Elliot Wolf, they've both talked about culture. Everybody. Alex Van Pelt, when he met with the media, talked about culture. Culture this, culture that. And Mayo has really talked about establishing connections with people. And one of the things that really drew them to Drake May was his leadership characteristics, his ability to lead a team, his ability to get along with everybody. There's that story about when Drake May was approached for all of these NIL deals. And he said, look, I'm not going to take an NIL deal unless you involve my teammates. And this is the beginning of the process for May. This is his chance to ingratiate himself with Polk and Baker and Bell and others on this team. Some of these UDFAs like a Deshaun Fenwick. This is the chance for May to have that great first impression with his teammates. That connection, that chemistry begins right now for the rookie quarterback. Can't overlook it. Big part of the job. Whenever he gets the keys, he has to lead this football team. He has to be accepted. He has to be borderline embraced in that locker room, and that begins today. We talk about Javon Baker. I'm interested to see how Baker interacts with his teammates. How does he approach this process? What is he going to do? What is he going to say? And we talked about his IG posts. Very confident guy, has the swag. I have no issue with it. I love when athletes have personality. But can Baker make sure that he acts at times as just one of the guys so he can connect with his teammates? You don't want to come across as the dink. So Baker's interactions with his teammates, his connection with Drake May, his connection with the coaching staff, is Baker going to act like an alpha? Is he going to be that guy from day one? Or is he going to be relatable? Is he going to be able to make that connection with Polk and others in that wide receiver room? So that is the beginning of that process and how Baker handles himself at Gillette Stadium, how he handles himself as a New England Patriot, and frankly, how he handles himself as a professional. The coach and the coaching staff, this is their opportunity to establish relationships. You establish the relationship with the rookie class. T.C. McCartney, Alex Van Pelt, really getting their hands on Drake May and giving May that big fat playbook for the first time to see how much May can retain. They gave some plays, I'm sure, during his top 30 visit, right? They've had some conversations with the whiteboard, but this is the meat and potatoes. This is getting down to it. This is handing the young man the playbook and telling him, you remember this. Let's see how you can do over the next couple of days. So this is that opportunity for Van Pelt and McCartney and maybe Ben McAdoo to work and talk with Drake May and start the install process and get him going. This is the chance for Hughes to work with the wide receivers. Again, Peters and Kugler to work with the offensive line. This is the chance for the coaching staff to bring these young pups in, make that connection before you get to X's and O's. And then when you get to the X's and O's, seeing who can pick up what and how fast they can do it. So there are things that this team will learn. We're not going to learn much about their futures. We're not going to take too much from what we see on the field, but behind the scenes, behind those closed doors, in those classrooms, looking at film, learning the playbook, having those conversations. This is the beginning of it all. It's a very exciting time. At least I think it's a very exciting time. New blood, new offense, new face of the franchise at quarterback. And really, this is their chance to all get together and start working on things. And Gerard Mayo, obviously, is at the tippity top of that pyramid. And Mayo has talked about it over and over and over again. As a rookie head coach, he has discussed making connections, having relationships with players before you get into the X's and O's, before you look at them as football androids, so to speak. And that's big to Mayo. And this weekend is big to and for Mayo, because this is his chance to be the head coach, to bring these rookies in, to make that connection with the entire room, to do what he talks about doing. All right, before I move forward, I want to talk about this Elliot Wolf revealing interview. I'll do that in a minute. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you're watching the YouTube channel, if you like the content, if you love the content, give us that thumbs up. Throw a comment as well into the chat if you'd like. Always love reading your comments. It's been difficult to get to the comments, honestly, with the Bruins and the Celtics playing every single night, but I do keep an eye on all of the comments. I appreciate you guys and gals investing your time. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify, rate and review. Elliot Wolf met up with Adam Schefter this week on Schefter's podcast, and he talked about the draft and how the draft fell well for the Patriots. Here's what he said. There were runs on certain positions of need. We were still able to get players that we wanted, that we targeted at those positions. Again, that was Eliot Wolf. Now, I think there are levels to want, right? When Eliot Wolf says there were runs on positions of need, we were still able to get players that we wanted, that we targeted. We know that Wolf targeted Xavier Legette. We know that Wolf wanted, according to reports, he wanted Legette more than he wanted Jalen Polk. That's obvious. He was trying to trade up for Legette. He traded back and picked Polk. So there are different levels of want. They wanted Legette, number one. That was their guy. It doesn't necessarily mean that you don't want Jalen Polk. In a perfect world, I'm sure Elliot Wolf would have loved to have both those guys, Legette and Polk, if somehow he could have made that happen. But as we know, it would have been pretty much impossible. But when he says we still got players that we wanted, that we targeted, we have to understand the context of that. Teams have boards. We talked about it before the draft, right? Vertically and horizontally, they stack these boards. They compare these players. So you want a number of players, but you have your priority list. You want Xavier Legette. You also want Jalen Polk. If Legette's off the board, you take Polk, but you wanted Legette more than you wanted Polk. Make sense? I hope it does. So while he talks about, this idea of we got who we wanted, sure, because they were on the list of players that you really liked or maybe even loved. But it doesn't necessarily mean that Elliot Wolf is telling us we got every guy at the top of our board at the top of every position. No. There's a difference between being happy and being thrilled. I think Wolf and company would have been thrilled if they got Legette. I'm sure they're happy they got Polk. There's gradations to this. There are differences. As far as runs on certain positions, that's also an interesting comment, because as we went through it earlier this week, a lot of people think that the Patriots missed the boat. They misread the board. They were sleepy in the war room. I try to challenge some of those narratives earlier this week on the pod. But this is Wolf pointing out, yeah, there were runs on certain positions, but we got players that we wanted. There's no doubt in my mind that Wolf was perfectly fine drafting Caden Wallace at 68, even though the rest of the football world, most of them said that's a major reach. Even though most of them say there's no chance that Wallace can move from the right side to the left side. I'm confident that Wolf wanted Wallace at 68. Because if he was desperate to move up, he could have moved up. It would have cost him in the end, We talked about that as well. But if he really wanted Suamataia over Wallace, he could have made that happen. He wasn't forced to take Caden Wallace. The proverbial gun was not up against his head. So I do believe that he really likes Wallace, had him on the board, and was perfectly happy with drafting him at 68. Doesn't mean it's going to work out. Doesn't mean he made the right choice. I just believe that Wolf believes in Wallace and was cool with it. All right, we talked a lot about the number 3 pick, right? Would they trade down? Would they accept the deal from Minnesota? Would they accept the deal from the New York Giants? Well, Elliot Wolf spoke to Schefter on his podcast about trading to the number 3 pick and whether or not he was close. Wolf said that they were not close. They were not close trading the number 3 pick. Interestingly enough, Schefter says during this interview that he got a text on draft night saying from somebody with the Patriots that there was 0 chance of a trade. And Wolf followed that up and said 0 chance is accurate to say. We were not stringing these teams along. The opportunity to pick Drake superseded anything that anyone was willing to offer. Nothing out there that made us come off of our plan. So Wolf says, hey, we were taking phone calls, but we were never close on making a deal. Nobody gave us anything that made us tempted to make that move. We were comparing the deals that we were offered with Drake May, and it wasn't even close. Drake May was the obvious call. And I agree with Wolf, and I think many of you agree with Wolf. Those deals that were reported, they were a joke. Minnesota offering, 11 and 23 in next year's first-round pick for number 3 in some mid-round picks. It's a joke. The Giants offering 6 in a first-round pick next year. That's a joke. So I believe Wolf saying that they weren't close on making a trade because I don't think either Minnesota or New York put nearly enough on the table to make them even think about it thoroughly. I don't think they even had to contemplate making that deal. They looked at that deal like most of us looked at those deals and said, yeah, right. We're going to stick and pick Drake May. What are we doing? Those deals were laughable. And I think the Patriots handled it perfectly. You were not offered the moon. Stick and pick. Take the big swing. Draft your franchise quarterback. All right, a lot more thoughts from Eliot Wolf with Adam Schefter, including some thoughts on the quarterback class that I found revealing. I think Wolf said an awful lot without saying an awful lot about this quarterback class. We'll get to that in a minute. But before we do, I want to remind you the Nick Cattle Show is brought to you by our friends at Warzone Paintball and Airsoft. Multiple villages, 30-plus acres of land, paintball and airsoft, both of those for children 6+, every age group. Show up with jeans, good shoes, long sleeve shirt. They will take care of you. It is a relaxed, chill, casual atmosphere. Their staff is absolutely terrific. Online, 4.9 stars. Who gets 4.9 star reviews right now? Pretty much nobody. I don't even get that. I'm jealous. Warzone Paintball and Airsoft, North Kingston, Rhode Island. Give them a call at 401-228-6366, 401-228-6366, and let them know that the Nick Cattle Show sent you. Elliot Wolf, Adam Schefter, let's continue. He was asked about re-signing guys. Why did he re-sign so many guys? Wolf said, quote, establishing a core. We had let some players walk in the past. It boils down to keeping good football players. Had the opportunity to not overthink it. Now, I thought that was interesting because Wolf, he mentions we've let guys walk in the past. And I think that tells us how some in that front office felt when guys like Jacoby Myers were allowed to walk. I'm sure there were multiple people in that building saying, why didn't we just keep Jacoby? Over like $1 million a year? We decided to move on from him to bring in Juju. Why don't we just keep Jacoby Myers? We've heard the things about Juju's knee. Why are we doing that? So I think there is a sense of frustration from Wolf when he mentions to Schefter, we had let some players walk in the past. I'm sure many people in that building were not thrilled with some of the guys that were allowed to just walk out the door, especially with the way that they failed to replace some of those guys. I also thought it was interesting that Elliot Wolf said that they weren't overthinking it. We had the opportunity to not overthink it. And my buddy Adam Jones, when I used to do the show with him at 98.5, he'd always bring up Occam's razor, right? When you hear somebody that works at 98.5 or has worked at 98.5, when they bring up Occam's razor, I can guarantee you those people, they listened or worked with Adam Jones. Because Jonesy always brings up Occam's razor, which is this thought that sometimes the simplest and most easy answer is the answer. That's the gist of it. And so here's Wolf saying, we didn't overthink it. And at times when you look past, in the past, some of these moves, there were, a number of times that you would look at it and you'd scratch your head and you'd say, why are they making this so hard? For example, like Myers, why would you not just pay the extra $1 million? You know what you have in him. He has a connection with your young quarterback. Why overthink that? And this was an offseason where the Patriots really did not overthink things as far as bringing their own guys back. Hunter Henry got a very fair deal. Bourne got a fair deal, especially coming off of an ACL. We've talked about them paying Duggar, Owenu, and Christian Barmore. Good money. The Barmore contract ended up being a little bit more team-friendly when you looked at the details, which makes sense because Barmore still had 1 year left on his deal, so he gets the security. The team gets a little bit of a team-friendly contract. But in the case of Owenu, who was a free agent straight up, and Duggar, who was transition tagged, those guys got paid as much money as they could ever anticipate. That's not overthinking it. That's not trying to do too much with the negotiation. You know what they're worth. You know the market value. Why go tit for tat? Why be bothered? Just get the deal done. Wolf, during this interview, also praised Belichick for his football acumen. He said that Belichick sent him good luck texts during the offseason and before the draft. So they still are at least cordial with each other, friendly with each other. It's good to know that Belichick apparently does not blame Elliot Wolf in any way for him losing his job. So I thought that was kind of cool that Wolf and Belichick are exchanging texts. They still have that relationship. That's cool. All right, a lot more. I want to get into the quarterbacks. That's coming up next because, again, I think Elliot Wolf said an awful lot about this quarterback class without saying an awful lot. I think Wolf told us how he had these quarterbacks personally ranked without giving us the numbers to those players. Don't forget, take a second of your time. Give us that like. Let's beat the algorithm. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review as well. So Wolf had a lot to say about the quarterbacks. He was asked about how much work. Again, he was on Adam Schefter's podcast this week. He was asked how much work did the Patriots do on other quarterbacks outside of Drake May. And Wolf said we did extensive work on all the guys. He was talking about the top 6. Spent a lot of time with all of them except one. Interesting. Spent all the time, a ton of time with them, a lot of time except one. He then followed up saying that was more of a scheduling issue than anything else. As people, we were really comfortable with all 6 guys. They're all football guys and all tough guys. So when I read that quote to you, it doesn't sound like much, but I do think that Wolf told us some things within that quote. I'll go over it one more time. We did extensive work on all those guys, talking about the top 6. Spent a lot of time with all of them except one. That was more of a scheduling issue than anything else. As people, we were really comfortable with all 6 guys. They're all football guys, all tough guys. Now, this is when I look at a comment, I look at a quote, and I take a couple of pieces from the quote that stand out to me. The one guy that they did not meet a lot with, we know who that is, right? We believe that is Michael Penix. Now, maybe he's talking about Bo Nix. Could be Bo Nix because Bo Nix did not take a top 30 visit, and at least Penix made a top 30 visit. But he brings up schedule. And we all know that the scheduling was a little funky because Penix had his pro day the same day that Drake May had his pro day. So I think he's telling us, look, we didn't get to spend all of the time in the world with one guy, but it wasn't because we weren't necessarily interested in that guy. It was a scheduling issue more than anything else. Then he says people, right? He's talking about the top 6 guys, the top 6 quarterbacks, and he says, as people, we were really comfortable with all 6 guys. He's not saying as a player. He's not saying as talent. He's saying as people, as human beings, they were very comfortable with all 6 guys. That tells me I don't believe that Wolf would have been in love with the idea of drafting all 6 of these guys, because he's differentiating things. He's saying as people, we were super comfortable, but he doesn't mention, as a talent, as a quarterback, as a person. I loved Bo Nix. Would I draft him? I'm not so sure. Ipso facto, right? Then Schefter asked Wolf to describe each of the top 6 quarterbacks. And this is where I think Wolf, he didn't say a ton, but I do think he told us how he truly feels about these quarterbacks by what he said. He was asked about Caleb Williams. Wolf said Williams is immensely talented, elevated his teammates, makes it look easy sometimes. So I think it's rather obvious that Wolf was a big fan, using words like immensely talented, elevating his teammates. That's what he said about Drake May, saying that Williams makes it look easy sometimes. So it's rather obvious, just like most of the league, Wolf really liked himself some Caleb Williams. On Jaden Daniels, Wolf said superb athlete, got a lot better in the pocket this year, dynamic athlete, underrated passer. So I think he liked Jaden Daniels. I don't think he liked Jaden Daniels as much as he liked Caleb Williams. But as far as the getting a lot better in the pocket this year, many people, when they looked at Daniels, they wondered, was Daniels so good because of the talent around him? How much better did Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. make Jaden Daniels? Well, here is Elliot Wolf telling us that he thinks that Daniels got better and a lot better in the pocket. So he thinks Daniels, his individual improvement, was something to make note of. J.J. McCarthy calls McCarthy a winner. His pro day was really indicative of some of the things that he could do that he wasn't asked to do at Michigan. Wolf said that McCarthy's talent surprised some people. Notice he said some people. He didn't say me. He said that McCarthy's talent surprised some people. Now, I take from that Wolf went into McCarthy's pro day a little higher than maybe some other people in the building did. Because he said, oh man, his talent surprised some people, right? His talent surprised some people in his pro day. He didn't say, I was surprised by what he did on his pro day. He showed me more during his pro day than I thought he was capable of. He said he did some things at his pro day that he didn't always show on the field at Michigan. And his talent surprised some people. Michael Penix. We all wondered about Michael Penix in that top 30 visit. Wolf said to Schefter regarding Penix, he grew on us over time. Talented passer. Showed some things at his pro day that he didn't always show on the field. And Wolf mentioned athleticism. Spending more time with him, felt very comfortable with him. So from that answer, Wolf pretty much tells us that at the beginning of this process, they weren't necessarily sold on Michael Penix. That Penix grew on them over time. The more they dug in on Michael Penix, the more they broke down his film, the more they had a chance to talk to him. Then they saw the athleticism at his pro day. Penix at the beginning of the process, to me, it sounds like Wolf in the front office, they were not really enamored with Penix. But as the process went on and as they got closer to the draft, they started to look at him as an option. And so when you think about that, it makes sense. They didn't go to his pro day. They sent a couple people to his pro day, again, because his pro day was the same day as Drake May. But when they did get a chance to really start to work on him, they started to like him. And so it makes sense from 30,000 feet that they brought Penix in as late as they did for that top 30 visit, because it was not love at first sight. It might not have even been, really like at first sight. But the more they got to know about the guy, the more they saw from the guy, the more they liked the guy. So they bring him in for that, visit as a top 30. So I thought that was a pretty telling answer from Elliot Wolf. I thought his most telling answer, though, was about Bo Nix. Wolf was asked about Nix. He called him a point guard. Stand and deliver, catch and shoot guy. That's pretty much all he said. Point guard, stand and deliver, catch and shoot guy. So if you're Elliot Wolf and you say that, what do you think Wolf sees? What if you think Wolf sees in Bo Nix when he calls him a point guard, stand and deliver, catch and shoot guy? To me, Wolf is calling Bo Nix really limited. He's a point guard. He facilitates. I mean, think about all the things he said about some of these other guys, right? J.J. McCarthy's talent surprised some people. Jaden Daniels was a dynamic athlete, underrated passer. Caleb Williams is immensely talented. Michael Penix grew on us over time. Talented passer, showed some things at his pro day. Bo Nix, point guard. Point guard, catch and shoot guy. So I think it's rather obvious by Wolf's answers that he did not really love in any kind of way Bo Nix. He saw Bo Nix as your facilitating quarterback. You're going to get the snap. He's going to get rid of the football. He's going to move forward. He's not dynamic. He didn't call him talented. He didn't, call him a winner. He didn't use any of those, words like immense when he talked about Williams, or elevated like he talked about Williams or Drake May elevating his teammates. Bo Nix is a point guard. Catch and shoot. So here's my personal read from what he said. And I could be totally wrong, obviously. This is just judging off of his answers on this podcast. But from what Wolf said, I feel like Caleb Williams was his number one. If the Patriots had the first pick, they would have done what Chicago did. Then I think he had Drake May and Jaden Daniels pretty tight. I would imagine that those guys were very, very tight, a slim margin. I wouldn't be surprised if some people in that front office liked Daniels more than May, others liked May more than Daniels. But it feels to me like that was the closest. That was, the closest as far as ranking these quarterbacks. Williams was number one, and then Daniels and May were tight together. Then I think that Wolf had McCarthy as his fourth quarterback on the board, saying his talent surprised some people. He's a winner, his pro day, indicative of some things that he could do. So I think he had McCarthy at 4. I think he liked McCarthy a little bit more than others liked McCarthy. He had Penix at 5, and that's because it's obvious he had Bo Nix at 6. So my pure speculative rankings of Elliot Wolf's board at quarterback, given what he said to Adam Schefter, Caleb at 1. I think he liked May more than Daniels. Again, just pure speculation, but I think he liked May more than Daniels. Yeah, Daniels at 3, McCarthy at 4, Penix at 5, Nix at 6. And I think, judging by what Elliot Wolf said about Bo Nix, Wolf saw Bo Nix more as a second-round talent than a first-round talent. When you call somebody a point guard, a catch-and-shoot guy, when you use the adjectives and superlatives that you used for the other 5 guys, and then you say that about Nix, I think Wolf saw Nix well below the other 5 and probably a second-round guy. So I would love to be in Elliot Wolf's head when the Denver Broncos picked Bo Nix at 12. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall. He did not say anything about May that he hadn't said before. He did say a few interesting things about Joe Milton, though. So here's what Wolf had to say about Joe Milton. I had the opportunity to watch Joe play live for the last game at Vanderbilt. Watching him throw the football is just unbelievable. He played in Heupel's offense, which is not an NFL offense. We just think there are some things that we can work with and develop. It was just one of those picks where there was too much talent to pass up. So Wolf is pretty much admitting to all of us that Joe Milton, he's a lottery ticket. He was a lottery ticket in the 6th round, and he has way too much talent to be in the 6th round to pass up. And we know that Elliot's father, Ron, he was a big fan of toolsy quarterbacks, so to speak, right? Big frames, big arms. That's why I tend to think Elliot liked Drake May more than he liked Jaden Daniels. But, they like those big quarterbacks with an elite trait or elite traits. And so Wolf sitting there looking at Joe Milton in the 6th round and that body he has and that rocket crazy bazooka arm that he has, I could see Wolf licking his chops and saying, we can't pass that up. I know the warts, but we can't pass that guy up. Did you see him throw the football? I saw him at Vanderbilt. When he played against Vanderbilt, I saw him rip the football. We can't pass that up. We got to take a swing at this guy. We've got to pick the lottery ticket. And I also think it's interesting that Wolf mentioned that Heupel's offense is not an NFL offense. And that they believe, the Patriots believe, that there are some things that they can work with regarding Milton and develop him. So to me, that sounds like they are not big on the Tennessee coaching staff. They don't think the Tennessee staff did Joe Milton many favors. They see the talent in Milton, and so they're going to take a swing and see if they can actually develop the young man. Schefter had a very interesting story on Milton. Schefter said, and of course, Adam Schefter went to the University of Michigan. That's why he's always breaking Michigan news, and he's always breaking Jim Harbaugh news. And he worked in Denver for a number of years, which is why he's always breaking Broncos news. But Schefter said he was visiting Michigan, and at the time, Pep Hamilton was Harbaugh's offensive coordinator. And Milton at the time was at Michigan before he transferred. And Schefter said that Pep Hamilton, who's worked with a lot of talented quarterbacks, including Andrew Luck, Hamilton told Schefter that Milton had enough talent to be the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft one day. That's Pep Hamilton. So Pep Hamilton is pretty respected in the offensive coaching world and in the quarterback world. And he told Schefter that he believed just talent-wise, again, it's just pure raw talent. Talent-wise, Milton had enough talent to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. Now we know that was far from the truth at the end of the day. He gets drafted in the 6th round, but that raw talent, the frame, the arm, the athleticism, Pep Hamilton was big on Joe Milton. And as they were talking about Milton, Wolf also shared his belief in the offensive staff. He said, having worked with Ben McAdoo and Alex Van Pelt before, they learned from Mike McCarthy. They have the quarterback school stuff that they did with McCarthy. And he mentioned that T.C. McCartney and those guys are going to implement that stuff for these guys. We'll see what they can do with them. Having worked with those guys before made it easier and more organizationally confident to take Joe. So there's Wolf saying, I was confident in taking Joe Milton because I saw the raw ability, and Ben McAdoo and T.C. McCartney and Alex Van Pelt, specifically, and most of all, Alex Van Pelt and McAdoo, they told Wolf, we feel like we can work with that guy. We feel like we can almost like strip him down to that raw ability, develop and build him back up. Now, will they be able to do that? Who the hell knows? But that's why you take a flyer on the guy in the 6th round, because he has that raw talent. He has that ridiculous arm, and you have an offensive staff and a couple of quarterback, quote unquote, gurus on that staff to work with him. And that's why you take the swing. Van Pelt, McAdoo, and McCartney are the most important people in this organization right now. Not even Elliot Wolf. It's not Gerard Mayo. The most important people in that building right now, Van Pelt, McAdoo, McCartney, because they are responsible for developing these young quarterbacks. And if you don't develop Drake May correctly, we're going to be having the same conversations in 3 years that we've had in the last 6 months, which is not fun. They have to develop Drake May the right way. You can support him with weapons. You can give him that offensive line. But if he does not develop with the footwork in the throwing motion. And if he doesn't learn the playbook correctly and you're not working with him on processing things, if those parts of his game don't get there, he will not get there as a talent. So Van Pelt, McAdoo, and McCartney, they're the most critical pieces to this puzzle right now. If they fail to develop Drake May, this team is not going to be good. And I'm not talking about 2024. I'm talking about the long term. You drafted May for 2025 to 2035, as I've said numerous times. But those three guys, they've got to get it right. They have to develop Drake May. And to a lesser extent, it'd be great if they could develop Joe Milton. But Van Pelt, McAdoo, and McCartney, all eyes on those three guys. And it really starts today. Rookie minicamp, Gillette Stadium. It is installing that offense. It's having these conversations with May. And it is immediately working to get those feet right, making sure he tightens up his motion, and you're on your way. I'm on my way towards hopefully a great weekend. Bad last couple nights with the Bruins and Celtics. We're going to wipe the slate clean. Bruins tonight at the TD Garden. Tomorrow night, Celtics in Cleveland. National primetime television. Sunday, got the Bruins again at the Garden. I think it's a 6:30 p.m. puck drop on Mother's Day. It's going to get serious. So all the mothers out there who watch and or listen, comment, we appreciate you. We love you. You do tremendous work, especially those single moms out there. Can't say enough about you. Hopefully you have a great weekend and enjoy yourself. I'm going to enjoy myself. Hopefully all of you enjoy yourself. Have some fun. Hopefully we get some wins this weekend. Until Monday, unless something outrageous drops, this, of course, has been the Nick Cattle Show.